right, we're here. Let's see, are we on time? I think so. 1:15. Feels pretty spot on for us. How's everyone doing? Were you able to get through the line? Like, did that happen? I just saw it, so I was a little bit. Hey everyone, Vince Minjares, Program Manager with the Aspen Institute, and excited to moderate this session, the School Sports at a Crossroads. This is a topic and an area of sports that is really important to a lot of people, obviously certainly all of us on the panel. And we're excited to dig into some meaty issues. We're excited to have a really thoughtful conversation. We have an amazing panel here ready for you. And I'm going to kind of just set the scene a little bit before we introduce the panelists and sort of dive into our questions. And I think the place to begin is if folks don't know, a few years ago, the Aspen Institute published the Reimagining School Sports Playbook. And it was really an amazing effort. It was about 2 years worth of work, talking to experts, profiling schools. If you go to our website, there's this amazing sort of set, and there's a link to it in the app. But there's an amazing set of case studies of high schools, big and small, rural, public, urban, suburban, and part of what that work did was it sort of really challenged us to rethink what's happening in school sports, to introduce new ideas, to continue to expand this beyond interscholastic sports as the only pathway, but also obviously improve the experience for those who are in that space. And that thinking outside the box is a good catalyst for the conversation we're going to have today, which is where are we in school sports? We'll talk a lot about certainly high school sports. We'll also talk about middle school. We know there's a lot of things happening in that space. And we're going to talk about it in an environment that's really changing. There's so much happening that is confronting administrators like Franky and Ron every single day, whether it's the trickle-down effect of college sports reform, a sort of unrelenting pressure that it feels like to win and be elite, rising costs for families and communities, and an omnipresent sort of social media landscape that I think feels like everything is always being watched. And so the question that we are asking in this session is what is the sort of unique value proposition of school-based sports, and what's its role in the ecosystem? And in asking that question, we'll obviously explore how we navigate the current sort of pressures facing administrators, coaches, athletic trainers, parents, and of course young people. So excited to dig into this conversation. Allow me to introduce my amazing panel. To my left is Ron Nocetti. Ron is the Executive Director of the California Interscholastic Federation. He's also the President-elect of the Board of Directors for the National Federation of State High Schools. Welcome, Ron. Can you give Ron a round of applause?
Thank you.
To Ron's left is Franky Navarro. Franky is the commissioner of the CIF Oakland section and the Oakland Athletic League. He's born and raised in Oakland and proud graduate of Castlemont High and University of Miami. Franky has played a lot of different roles in the space of school, including coach, athletic director, and restorative justice facilitator. Welcome, Franky.
Thank you.
And Ari Manrique is a current psychology student at the University of California, Berkeley. She'll be graduating this May, right? Is that right? May? Mm-hmm. Exciting. Ari's amazing. Ari's got a really cool background that is going to add a lot to this conversation. She's was the captain of the women's soccer team here for 2 years before medically retiring. She played on the U.S. Youth National Team during her time in Atlanta, Georgia, playing youth soccer. She's now on staff with the women's soccer team and is also been coaching at Berkeley High School. So she's got that dual coaching role of college and high school. And she's very active in the Cameron Institute for Student Athlete Development. She's also clearly an overachiever because she's a leader in the service learning program at the Cameron Institute. So welcome, Ari. Okay, let's hear from our panelists, and I'm going to ask them each the same question. So Ron, we'll start with you. What makes school sports different? Help us give us your perspective.
Well, it's the way I look at it is it goes back to the CIF mission, and we make it very clear. We say it's bigger than sports. We provide all students with the opportunity to belong, connect, and compete in education-based experiences. And the reason we say that is it's not always just about the student athletes on the track, in the gym, in the pool, on the field, but it's about the community surrounding them. It's about their friends in the stands, their parents and families there to support them. I think that's what really sets high school sports apart. And it's also the educators that are around them, their coaches, their teachers. We're about transforming lives of students, not being transactional with students. And I think that's what really sets high school sports apart.
I really, really appreciate that. And actually, as a show of hands, how many here work in school sports today? Raise your hand. That gives us a sense for where we are. And I love that, and I agree with it strongly. Franky, what's your answer to that question?
Yeah, no, I think I need to just, I've said this in a number of spaces, but ultimately, school-based athletics is one of the last free options to participate. And that's what's important. It provides opportunity for students, it builds community, and depending on where you're at, it can also serve as violence prevention. And so just thinking of that matter of, the ability to connect with adults, to have lifelong memories that are positive, and we all remember our positive lifelong memories as a kid growing up, specifically playing sports around school-based. So it's the one place where kids show up, for 182 plus days throughout the year. And so we want to make sure that those of us that are in the school create those positive memories for students. But again, not many options to participate without having to pay, and school is one of them that's still standing strong.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point that we're going to come back to in talking about why schools have been such a center of the strategy in Oakland in particular to grow access and address the equity questions. Ari, you've had a super interesting high school sports experience. Maybe share a little bit with the audience and why you value school sports so much.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to travel with the youth national team, which led me to have a less traditional high school experience, having to do online school for my first 3 years. But there definitely was a push to go back my senior year. I think there's something to be said about playing a high school sport, being a part of something bigger than yourself. I would go to school and everybody knew that I played soccer, but they didn't know to what extent. And I think that the high school space really gave me an opportunity to have fun with and play with other people that I haven't gotten a chance to play with, but also it's a little bit performative. I got to do my best on a big stage in a big stadium under the lights with, my peers watching me, people I see every day in classes and passing. And I think that that's super important to be able to do something in a competitive space with the sport, with the people that you see every day in school, and kind of bridging the gap and seeing your teachers coming out to support you, and all the times I had to, get maybe extensions on an assignment because I had something, they can see it really come into fruition and see me do the sport I love on a bigger stage in a less traditional club setting and more of a high school sports setting.
I think it's not to go unnoticed that particularly in a sport like soccer, a lot of young people who are in the club space and on that track don't play high school sports. Like, why are people stepping away, and what's your argument for sticking in?
I think for a few reasons. I think when it comes to club soccer, you put such a big commitment. It's a 10-month thing, and there's no space, there's no time for high school soccer. But I think that taking those 2-3 month break, it's valuable. I think high school soccer was the most fun I've had in my entire soccer career, whether from playing in China to I'd rather play at my high school because it was fun. It was genuinely fun. The coaches created an environment where I felt like I could grow as a player. I got to inspire other people that I was with and get inspired by people that I wouldn't have been able to if I wasn't playing high school sports. I think it takes you out of a traditional setting of club soccer where everything is pay to play. I look to the sidelines and it's the same parents I've seen since I was 6. But as opposed to when it's high school soccer, it's different kids from different schools, different kids within my community that come out and watch you play on a bigger stage. And it just means a little bit more. I feel like when you're playing in front of your peers, especially as a high schooler, because peer validation is everything when you're in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So it was a cool experience, and it was nice to step away from the traditional setting of it's my parents and it's college recruiters. And now, it's whoever wants to come see it. It's young kids, it's kids from the elementary school, the middle school, your teachers, counselors coming out and supporting you. So it's a different vibe, but it's fun, and it's a learning experience that I'm happy that I was able to have, even if it was just for 1 year.
Yeah, when I hear that, I just hear community. I think about school as a place where there's a built-in community, there's a built-in set of relationships. I understand that there's always a competitive development question that we're always asking, particularly as you move into these pathways, but there is something fundamental about the community that is built into school sports. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with Ron. Ron is like, yes, Vince, keep saying that.
Yeah, well, don't you think also, like what Ari mentioned, isn't part of it incumbent upon our national governing bodies and our professional sports organizations? We ask for 3.5 months a year in our season. Maybe there's a way to find out to leave high school soccer, high school sports alone. During that time, you can have the other 8, 9 months out of the year. I think there has to be these partnerships. Unfortunately, a lot of times we pick up the phone and there's just not an answer on the other end. So I think there's partnerships that need to be developed there so that students like Ari can experience both.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think collaboration between governing bodies, whether they be state-based high school bodies or national sport bodies, I would personally welcome that. I think that's a really important piece. Let's keep leaning into the question of the value proposition of schools, and Franky, I'm going to start with you. Thanks to the amazing support of Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, the State of Play Oakland report really shined a light on the state of access and opportunity in Oakland. Obviously revealed a number of statistics and issues that need to be addressed. One of the things that was important about the recommendations was the centering of schools in the play strategy, that the community-based school model was a way of thinking about schools as a hub for sport and physical activity and not just sort of another thing or another place. Can you just help the audience understand, again, sort of like what came out of the report in terms of recommendations, how you use the report, and how you are leaning into the recommendations from a school's perspective?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think just to provide some additional background, when we took over as commissioners for 2019, there was very little participation in Oakland. I think it was mentioned earlier with Flynn Under Armour. But my good brother Lamont Robinson, who was our assistant commissioner, was also pivotal in putting together a task force of Oakland community members for us to really set the strategy on what we wanted to do. And it was at that time that we began our partnership and really grew as family with Eat, Learn, Play, that then developed into, the State of Play report for Oakland. Out of that report, one of the things that really stood out for me was a need for the voice that students that wanted to just play with their friends. I think there's a lot of data around who's playing, who's not playing, but for us, both Lamont and I being born and raised here in Oakland, grew up in this league, it was important that we gave back and really, put together a strategy that was going to tackle the idea of wanting to play with friends. And that's where the middle school kind of piece was born out of, that we have now mirrored what we do at the high school. The same year as I started as commissioner, Ron and his staff was extremely helpful in allowing me to build those relationships at the state level with my commissioner colleagues as well, that learn what other folks are doing, right? Like I said, I stepped into this role as an Oakland Athletic League kid with a vision that now, again, using the data that was driven from there in 2022, that we've been able to really make decisions. But the other part, the work that Eat, Learn, Play has done is open doors that we never really wouldn't have been able to walk into. To really leverage and push our school district, who's been extremely supportive of resourcing our programs with now a vision versus before there was no plan, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've been able to make some impact at the middle school level that has grown. I think there's still some areas of growth for us to build more collaborative relationships with our city as we look at facilities and our parks and parks facilities that we use. But all of it is, again, opportunities lead to more growth that we have and more work that we have to do. But again, it's, over the last several years, our Oakland Unified School District has really also put in a lot of effort into supporting our work that has led to the growth that you heard earlier with 20% growth in participation at the middle school level, which then is going to lead into more high school participation. So as a CIF Oakland section commissioner, my responsibility is high school, but it really, in order for us to tackle the decline of participation in the city of Oakland, we needed to create our own pathway, which was middle school sports.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with you because I know that the Title IX's been a part of the strategy. Can you talk about how how Title IX has fit into some of the work you've been doing?
Yes, so now that's also another background information is when I was appointed commissioner, we were under a Title IX settlement. The district was identified as not being compliant. We had an actual female participation gap at the time. There was an announcement of sports that were going to be cut due to budgets, and as you continue to hear with public school districts and budgets cuts, those cuts never really happened, but what did happen is it gave us an opportunity to work with Dr. Donna Lopiano, who I've worked with for a whole year, and still continue to stay in touch of just around making sure that we're in compliance. But it really allowed us to train our administrators, our athletic directors, and everyone within our school district to look at it from a Title IX lens, and not because it was a thing to do or check the box. It's actually the right thing to do. We want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for both boys and girls. We're looking at, listening to students' voices. And so throughout that time that we worked with Dr. Donna Lopiano, we really grew to understand our participation, also our facilities, and obviously how we allocate resources. But sticking with facilities, that's where it helped us drive some of the messaging as we were looking to continue our partnership and build out with the Under Armour investment recently of renovating several of our gyms at Learn Play and just creating these spaces. But it's really from the work that we did with Dr. Donna Lopiano around reassessing our district, where there are gaps, where there's some successes, and we're going to continue to do that work. And obviously, with the recent sanction of girls flag football has helped, but we've added girls lacrosse to the fold as well. So we're looking to provide more opportunities for our girls as well in Oakland.
Yeah, man, it's amazing. I think a round of applause probably for me. I think that's. I think that there's a couple of themes that come out of what you talk about, and I know there's been a lot of folks who put a lot of time, and you've mentioned quite a few of them. It's this notion of partnership. And Ron, I wonder if maybe you can kind of just talk about how partnership, you have this sort of wide angle lens on everything, but how does partnership fit into school-based sport opportunities? Are there trends that you're seeing that are really helping to accelerate the way in which sport is delivered in school from a partnership perspective?
I think not so much at the high school level, because most of our schools, not all, but most of our schools have the necessary facilities to have their basic sports program. Where I think partnership with community and community-based programs, recreation and parks could play a much bigger role is middle school sports. As Oakland does a fantastic job with Franky Lamont and their team providing those opportunities. Let's face it, 70% of students we don't even see at the high school level because they've quit sports by the age of 13. And there should be sports in every single middle school in the state of California. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. We're only authorized to govern 9 through 12 athletics, but we're more than happy to help. We've already told those that have it, use any of our materials, our health and safety materials. A huge credit to our Sports Medicine Advisory Committee for all the materials they've developed over the years to make our games that we play safer for kids. Our middle schools have access to that if they want it. Use it, put your own logo on it. We just want to see more students participate. So I think that's where, ultimately, I guess that would be the ultimate partnership is high school sports partnering with middle schools, and then think about all the different ways, the leadership opportunities you could set up for students, that you could have your high school students that are at their local middle school. My guess is you already do this, where they're going to coach at their local middle school. It becomes part of what they do. Then these students are looking up to those students. I want to be them on the court or in the field or in the pool. Shameless plug for Ari that she needs to come back and coach high school soccer. We need the kids that played in our state and in our areas to come back and coach the future generations of students. So I think those kinds of partnerships definitely can happen.
I think it's a really good one, and I mean, I think we've been, the Cameron Institute is a good example of sort of civic engagement, using college student athletes to actively work in their communities, including coaching. And Ari, I do want to turn to you next, because I think one of the things that you've shared in terms of your observations, coaching, is the experience of girls in the transition from middle to high school, and you've observed students stopping playing sport when they get to high school. Can you just talk about kind of what you've seen, what you think the issue is, and any thoughts about kind of what we might do?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think we can say it's hard to be a teenager, and I think teenagers are feeling that, and as the ever-changing world that we have with social media and everything else, it's hard. It's hard being at that age. It's hard being 13, 14, and now students who already ask so much in the education space, now you're asking me to go to practice after class? No way. And they kind of can get lost in this, well, I don't want to continue to do it. I have so much other things on my plate, but it's kind of when you get over that hump and you see, okay, high school sports, it's not a big thing. It's, I can have fun with my friends, I can learn, I can grow, it's a way to move my body, it's a way to learn in a different way. It's a way to do teamwork and to be a leader and maybe learn how to be a follower. Skills you don't learn in the classroom. So I think it's getting over that hump of yes, it's going to be hard, but you are capable of doing it. I think that it comes with a healthy and safe, inclusive environment from coaches and from everybody else. And I think as a coach, you kind of have to set the scene of, especially in high school, you have people coming in at different skill levels, and you want it to be competitive and you want it to be fun for everybody, but you have people who have played club their entire life and then girls who have never touched a soccer ball. And you're kind of navigating that gap, and you don't want to turn anybody away, but you want to make a space for everybody to learn and grow. And I think that's a super important piece. So it was cool to come in as a college player and to have that coaching role. The first 2 years I was on as a JV assistant, and I would joke with my head coach, I was like, I feel like I'm just convincing the girls to stay. I'm convincing them to come to practice. And in hindsight, I was like, this is not what the job entitled, but it's really what they needed, and it's what I needed too. I was able to find my love for the sport again in a tough time of having to medically retire, because I'm able to share my love with my community, and I see the girls go from maybe deciding to quit after freshman year to seeing them at senior day, and they've made it all the way through, and they have no plans of playing in college, but they have a nice group of friends. They got something out of it. They learned. They became a better person because of it, and they also had they got to move their body after. They got to the physical element and the health element and learning all that. So I think there's more to it than just the success, and I think that kids, they're so scared of failure, and they're so scared of, well, everything is hard already, I don't want to keep going, but you need a support system of a community of coaches, of parents, of anybody around them, healthy role models that they can look up to, of you know what, yeah, you might not go play D1, D2, or D3, but you can spend 4 years at a good high school program and get something out of it. You can have a connection with your coach, and they can help you and be a mentor. You can have a connection with other people, and I think that's what's been really cool about the Cameron Institute and Berkeley High School, and specifically bringing college people in and being like, hey, this is a role model. This is somebody who looks like me, who understands what it's like to be a girl. I get the TikTok references. I get the little social media jokes, and I can connect with them on a deeper level that coaching can't. Other coaches can't when they come into these spaces. So it was really cool to see, and I think that it's a win-win situation, because it's an hour of my time, but it means a lot to them, and it's relationships that they get to take and things that they get to learn, even if they hang up the cleats after their senior night. It's still something, and they got something out of it.
Yeah, I love that, and I think we need to just clone you as much as possible so that we can get more Aris out there. I think you make so many really important points, and in particular, I think the last piece around, just sort of having coaches and volunteers who get young people who are there, who want to be there willingly, and who take the time to create spaces that are welcoming is is fundamental
Yeah.
to the question of retention. I do want to use the moment of this conversation about access and retention to obviously call out an issue that's top of mind for everyone right now, which is the transgender students in high school sports. And I want to give our panel an opportunity to comment. And Ron, we'll start with you. We know that the CIF is currently involved in an ongoing sort of legal situation, so there's probably some constraints about what you're at liberty to say, but what would you share with the audience about sort of the current moment we're in terms of transgender students playing interscholastic sports in California high schools?
Sure. So what I can share, if you're not familiar, and I have no problem sharing this, it's very public, the California state law, California Education Code, and therefore, because of that, California CI bylaws make it very clear that students are allowed to participate in sports in the gender with which they identify. And that's been California law since 2014. So it's not something that's new on the books for the state of California. I go back to our mission statement that we provide students with the opportunity to belong, connect, compete, and I think in this situation really focus on the belong and connect. We want students to have the opportunity to feel like they have a place where they belong, where they connect. Are there things we need to continue to look at within our state with respect to competition? No question. But we're in the middle of an OCR investigation saying that we're in violation of Title IX. We've submitted documents to that request, and now it's a waiting period for us. But the biggest thing, we've been very consistent in our message is what our mission is, but also that we follow the law of the state of California. We follow the education code of the state of California. The CIF could say, let's say we waved a magic wand and changed our bylaw tomorrow. That has no impact on our schools. Our schools still have to follow the law of the state of California. We haven't changed our bylaw really for that part because we're not going to go down that road and put our schools then in the position. I have no problem if these agencies want to come and attack me personally. I'd rather take that as part of the job. I knew what I was signing up for than having our principals, our athletic directors, our students. And that's why we were asked a very few pointed questions saying, give us the names of students that are participating, give us the names of schools. And no, we're not going to provide that information. Not going to draw a roadmap for someone to then go attack students or schools on social media. Because frankly, that's what this has become. There's just so many kids being attacked on social media that it's become more about that than about the issue that we should all be talking about.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Franky, I know from an OAL perspective, you're part of CIF. What would you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I want to add is, going back to what I said is we are prioritizing creating community and welcoming and supporting all that participate. And so we continuously want to make sure that all of our coaches have also that mindset at the middle school level, high school level, understanding that for many of students, the school space is the sanctuary space that they show up to every day, and making sure that we continue to obviously follow all guidance, but more importantly, that we're doing the right thing for every individual, every human, and understanding that we, participating in sports for many is an outlet. We want to make sure that we are creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for all.
Yeah, and you've been really active in generally trying to create as many diverse opportunities as possible, right?
And so we, to add to that point, we listen to students' voice, family voice within our community of what sports offerings we're looking to add, and that's how we've been able to grow and mirror a lot of our middle school sports offering to mirror our high school, but in addition, like this year we're launching ultimate frisbee, we've had kickball, futsal that normally wouldn't be on the menu options for high school participation.
Yeah, no, and I think there is a sort of open, it makes me reflect generally, and I'm going to channel the wisdom of Ashley Huffman, who I think has been a very great addition to our team. How do we continue to create, how do we build compassionate creative approaches to sport opportunity for young people. I think it's a really, it's an important moment to keep thinking deeply about the way in which we design sports. And we can all continue to sort of keep doing that work as great as possible to be as inclusive as possible. Yeah. I think it's a great opportunity to sort of continue to talk about the question of the environments we create for young people and the people who are working with young people. I think if anyone knows sort of the role that I play, coaching is an important part of the work that I personally do and that the Aspen Institute has been driving. We're very active in a number of initiatives that are coaching focused, including the Million Coaches Challenge, and there's quite literally a panel happening at the same time about what we've been learning through the Million Coaches Challenge. But I do think that from a school's perspective, it's an important topic of conversation because we've seen more states adopting, in some cases they're state high school associations, in other cases it's state legislatures, adopting a requirement for coaches to complete a mental health training course. Can we talk a little bit about, where we are with coaches, either in terms of the readiness to help young people meet needs? And Ari, I might turn to you first just because you're living it every day at multiple levels. Like, what's the challenge today of school-based coaches working with young people?
I will say, speaking from having coached against some other coaches, I at first I wasn't sure if there were any rules that people had to follow to become coaches, because some of the things, it was just this is not safe, inclusive for young people. This is it's freshman soccer. It's not that it's not serious, but the point is to have fun. The point is to learn. The point is to grow. So having coaches that understand that and meet the needs of the students is most important. There are days where I went into practice and I had a whole practice plan for my high school girls, but I hear they had a hard test in chemistry, and suddenly maybe that's not where their mind at, and they need something a little bit more fun and a little bit more lighthearted. And you see them 5 days out of the week with a game on the weekend. One day could be set aside for fun. So I think it's understanding what your students need at the time. It's not always going to be go, go, go. There's going to be times where you're going to have to read the room a little bit and adjust and pivot. And I think that having coaches that have the ability to do that, having coaches that are well equipped to do that and are able to understand that, this player's not having a good day. So maybe, it's okay. You have to maybe treat them a little bit differently that day, and that's totally fine. And I think that I pull back on a lot of the experiences that I've had. I have great coaches. I had coaches that I choose to forget, and I never wanted to be a coach that my players forgot. I wanted to be known as a coach who was caring and who was kind and who pushed them to be, the best player that they could be, because everybody's different. While we have goals to win, and I told my team I like to win, but winning is not always everything. Winning looks different. Winning could mean you won the day, you had a great day today, and that's a win. Maybe that's the win you needed that week, as opposed to winning a game in practice. So it's meeting students and the people that you're in front of where they're at and what they need, because at the end of the day, you're a coach, you're there to serve them, and you're there to make them better people. So it's understanding what they need, hearing it, using what you've learned from your experiences, from the multiple things you had to do beforehand, and giving them those tools as young people to hopefully, when they're done with the practice and they're done with the sport, it translates to other things, because not everything is going to be sports-based.
Ron and Franky, as administrators, you have the unenviable task of thinking about structural ways of preparing coaches. We know this is a real challenge. There's a lot of requirements that we're thinking about. We're all concerned about the burden sometimes of requirements. We know that partnership is a big part of what happens in Oakland. What are your perspectives on how administrators can use what levers are sort of available to you to continue to sort of support coaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, I have to take it back just to also provide you some information. In Oakland Unified, we operate under the community schools model, which has been extremely helpful because Oakland Athletic League is also in the same department as my colleague Martha with Expanded Learning, that's doing some work with elementary schools and after school program, also with our behavioral health. And so the fact that we're all under one umbrella trying to serve the whole child allows us to also design strategies and practices for our coaches. With that, also the challenge in Oakland is, our coaches are paid at the bottom of the totem pole. And it's not that they're showing up for the pay, but it's how do we also leverage coaches that are willing to do the work because they want to make an impact in the kids' lives. And so, again, being able to tap into our partnerships that whether are through us, through after-school programming, or that our school district has with community-based organizations helps us also bring quality, right? And I think a lot of our focus has been on increasing participation, but now that we have participation, how are they getting quality instruction, quality mentorship? And so we cannot do this alone, even as a school district. It does take those community-based sports organizations that are doing the work, that are investing in the community so that we can begin to expand our reach. But ultimately, there's been a lot of learning from those community-based sports organizations that our own coaches can do, right? Whether it's teachers and local staff at the school site. And then the last thing is also just the importance of what we can do to bridge the gap between family and the school. And a lot of times it's how we train coaches to even deal with parents and communicate with parents and be a resource for parents has also increased engagement at our schools. So I think all in all, it's a long, big body of work that's hard to just pinpoint on one thing. And specifically when you're in a city that has consistently had a divide from a socioeconomic status that we've been trying to blur, depending on the zip code that you live in, it's been important for us to really just build everyone together with the knowing so that we have to continue to develop coaches. Obviously, there's the trainings that they have to go through, and those are non-negotiable because of the safety of the student. But there's also additional trainings and professional development that we look to make sure we put in front of coaches so that they can be better individuals and better mentors for the community.
Yeah. Ron, how do you think about it from a state perspective?
Yeah, it's I think what Franky said at the district level is where this issue is right now, because there are different needs in different districts right now. And we're a large state. I mean, to put it in a little perspective, the NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 combined in the whole country has roughly 1,100 member schools and 500,000 student athletes. In California alone, we have 1,632 member schools and over 800,000 student athletes. So it's a large state. So what we become really in working a lot with our sports medicine advisory committee is we become kind of a resource center for schools and school districts. There's not a current mandate for this from our schools, but many of our districts are already doing it, but they want to do it in-house because it's not just about coaches, it's about their teachers, it's about their administrators, it's about everyone that interacts with their students every day. So this is one that's been left at the local level for now. We're happy to step in and provide guidance where needed and point them in the right direction. But we haven't really been asked by our membership to develop a statewide course for this yet.
Got it. We'll continue. Let's stay on the topic of state needs and an issue that will be addressed also extensively tomorrow as part of the Future of Sports Injury and Athlete Healthcare panel. Check that out tomorrow. Shameless plug because I organized it. But athletic trainers in California, there's a real need here. Help the audience understand what makes California unique from an athletic trainer perspective and kind of where we are.
I'm assuming the one applause there was, I can't see anything, but I'm guessing that was Dr. Cindy Chang somewhere out there applauding is my guess. If you haven't heard her speak, please come to that session tomorrow. You won't be disappointed because there's not a fiercer advocate for health and safety in school sports than Dr. Chang. So for us, I believe it's still current. I should have checked before I came, but I believe we are the only state in the United States that doesn't license athletic trainers. Which, given our state, given how far ahead of the curve we are in every issue, it's unfathomable. Have they gotten to a point where at least now, and I know the bill goes a lot further than this, but at least now people cannot just simply call themselves an athletic trainer. There's a process, there's an educational process involved to be able to do that, but it's not far enough. We need to license athletic trainers in the state of California. Right now, less than half of our schools, roughly half of our schools, have access to some type of athletic training services on their campus, part-time or full-time. We talk about athletic programs and dollars spent in schools. What more precious way to spend our resources than on the health and safety of our student athletes? We're asked to provide data all the time to the state. And we're like, tell me where the data is going to come from. Who's going to provide it to us because you don't have the right people on the campus right now that know how to collect that data. and know how to do it safely, know how to protect the privacy of students, et cetera. So it's just an issue that it's been ongoing in our state for years, and every year the California Athletic Trainers Association does an amazing job on advocacy with this issue. And unfortunately, we run into some groups who are, may get in a little trouble here, but are more concerned with their own little turf rather than what's doing right for the health and safety of the students of the state of California. So something we need to continue to push.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I will just say that we've been doing a lot of work on ACL injury, and in particular, the work on ACL injury has benefited immensely from the high school Rio study, which is the administered by Daedalus. And Daedalus catalogs the athletic trainer reported injuries in high school sports. And the key term there is athletic trainer reported injuries, that athletic trainers are the medical reporter who provide that data. It allows us to even assess the state of the injury. So we don't know where we are without them. So I'm happy to piggyback on the importance of this issue. The other thing I think that's worth talking about here is, and this will kind of transition to the last topic I want to talk about around pressure in high school sports and the kind of competitive environment that so many young people find them in. And let's start by thinking about parents who are often, depending on your perspective, parents can be the group that people are mad about, because there's so much coming from the sidelines. You ask parents, and our youth sports parent survey has got some really interesting findings. The survey, they're citing school coaches as the ones who are more likely to pressure their kids to specialize. But we are in an interesting space with parents from a school's perspective. Regardless of where you sit on this issue, I think we can probably all agree that there's a lot of behavior at competitions in particular that we struggle with. Franky, Ari, what are some things that you're seeing from a parent perspective in school sports? Help us understand kind of what do you think is going on?
For sure. I think there's always going to be the issue of parents want to win through their child. Yeah. Right. And I think for us, because we've been able to build relationships with our community, and us meaning our staff, our coaches, our schools, it has helped to address those issues when those issues come up. When we're not intentional about building community and creating an atmosphere that fosters positive sportsmanship, and we allow things to kind of fester in, then it's difficult to kind of change that behavior. And so I think that's going to continue to be an ongoing challenge until we continue to, that doesn't mean that we stop doing the work, but ultimately, we will have those situations where parents just feel like their child is the next person that's the next star, or I want to win through my child. And it's been, great to see within our even middle school competition, high school competition, where anyone can really go address it and have that real conversation with the family about the way you're displaying your behavior is not really benefiting. The flip side to it as well, we've seen where the impact that the parents have on the child, right? And we've been able to identify those cases again through building community and having connections and allowing our coaches to identify when there's an uneasy from the child because their parent is acting a fool in the stands and maybe they don't want to show up again. And so I think being able to support the child in those situations again is also important. But one of the recent things that we've done this year at our high school championships is kids are reading the sportsmanship, and it was just amazing to see the tension in the stands when the kids read the sportsmanship award versus when the announcer read the sportsmanship award. And again, these are tools that have been shared with us from the CIF at the state level. But again, I think it's an ongoing conversation, it's an ongoing training for our administrators of how we address these issues. But ultimately, I think the successes that we've had in Oakland with addressing those is because we've been intentional about building relationships with those that show up to support their kids every day. Even when you just say hello when they're coming in and, wishing them a good day when they're leaving. But I think those small interactions allows for those interactions that when they need to be a little tougher about I noticed you were yelling some things you weren't supposed to yell. But those are, just it's going to continue to be an ongoing battle, but I think the more that we build community, the more that we're in the space together,
Yep.
the better we can address those for sure.
Ari, I want you to also comment here, but I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit because I think one of the things that the audience is probably interested in, maybe drew them here, was the NIL question. And I think it's interesting to think about it in relation to parents, because part of what we know is that while NIL is something in the college space that has become part of the fabric of college sports, more states have, there are a large number of states, we're talking about 40 roughly, that allow NIL at the high school level and below. And when you're in high school, you're a minor, right? Your parents are actively part of the process. You are in college, you're also working. Talk a little bit about NIL, what you're seeing, and how you think it's shaping what's going on at the high school level.
Yeah, I think NIL is a lot about like building your brand, and it's what you want to be represented at, and it's using your sport, something you've been doing probably your whole life, and trying to monetize on it. There's nothing wrong with, making money and doing all those things, but I think we're kind of losing a little bit of like the passion and the purpose for the game. There's no, I think it's so easy to transfer and try to run to some new money or to something, taking steps to build your brand, and you're losing the community piece. You're losing the piece of, maybe my situation right now isn't the best, but there's a mental toughness to it. There's something to be said about getting over a hard situation or going through something stressful and coming out of the other side of it a lot better. And I think that with the introduction of NIL, while it's been super great for athletes to build their brand and hopefully ultimately give back to the community that gave so much to them, it's also creating a space where people are chasing money and not necessarily chasing like the best opportunity for them at the moment, because they're blinded by the dollar signs. And I think that you're seeing it at a college level and maybe at a high school level of just like, you're moving because it's easier, you're moving because maybe you'll get more money, maybe. But I think that it comes from like, you want to have an environment where you can grow as a person, and hopefully the NIL and the money comes along with it, and not I'm chasing this experience, I'm chasing this money, and not really growing from it. Because once you're done and your eligibilities run out, whether it's high school, whether it's college, the NIL checks aren't going to be coming. You're going to have to be something more than just your brand as a student athlete. And I think that's what students now are having to navigate. You're making, hundreds of dollars in this space, but the second you hang up the cleats, the second you're no longer on the roster, the NIL people aren't hitting you up. So you have to become a person outside of the money, and we're losing that a little bit.
Ron and Franky, what's your view on the NIL?
You mind if I weigh in a little bit on the parent thing before?
Yeah, sorry, apologies.
Because who would ever thought we got to a place where, I know when my kids were growing up playing high school sports, even when they're playing college sports, two of them still do, I tell them the same thing, that my only concern, the only time you're going to hear from me is if you don't act the right way on the court, or you don't act the right way in the pool. That's the only thing I'm ever going to address with you regarding sports. Now our kids, as Franky said, are having to be the ones that tell the parents that. Mom, Dad, you need to behave in the stands tonight. In what world did we think we were getting to that point where the kids are having to tell their parents how to behave? We put 2 bylaws in place recently, and it's sad that we had to put them in place. One is, as an adult, if you can't behave at a high school game and you're asked to leave, you don't get to come back the next game. And we're now upping that to you don't come back the next 3 games. We had 2 former NBA players ejected from contests in the last 2 years for not knowing how to act at high school athletic contests. We also had to put a rule in saying that if you're an adult spectator and you physically assault a game official, you're done attending high school sports in the state of California for good. And we had people complain. We literally had people say, well, that's not fair. I'm like, wait. You're telling me that you can go and physically assault someone in a parking lot, which we saw happen after a baseball game, and you think you have the right to then come back to our events? So I just think that it's something that we have to really continue to take the lead on. It's also why we talked about wanting to get more involved in sports at the younger ages, because I think to have the influence at the younger ages, just look at all the videos you see out there. There's referees literally being chased around basketball courts after games at 8-year-old basketball games. Yeah. I mean, that's how sad it's gotten. So sorry, I couldn't. I had to chime in on that one.
No, that's your pet issue. You got to get into it.
But NIL in California is a little different. We don't have NIL in California, as much as people want to call it that. Name, image, and likeness is a state law in California dealing with the post-secondary schools, because you have the ability to use your name, image, likeness while wearing your school uniform. You've all seen the commercials now. It used to be they were out of uniform, now they're in uniform. That's really what name, image, and likeness is. In high school sports, we still do not allow them to appear on behalf of their school. They cannot have a connection to their school while wearing their uniform, and we really just want to keep high school sports high school sports. Will it change over the years? I'm sure at some point, we'll see legislation, but right now, for us, it's more individual endorsements. As long as you're not wearing your school name, your uniform, referring to your school, you can do that. But there's not a lot of high school students that have that recognition outside of uniform that have the ability to do that. It's more about they're doing it once they get to the college level. And the NCAA just put a change forward. I don't know if it got passed, but they're going to start letting them negotiate those pre-enrollment at the NCAA level, which could create another issue for us.
Franky?
Yeah, I mean, the only piece I would add is, obviously for us here in the city of Oakland, when there's already a small pool of qualified scholarship athletes, that chance of getting to that next level gets even a little smaller with what's going on at the NCAA. But what we've done is we have some great people in our office that have played college sports, and really just took that as an opportunity to begin to educate our students about NIL. Talking about engaging students through sports and understanding what that landscape will look like if they get the opportunity at the next level, but also an opportunity to provide some financial literacy for our high school student athletes, because what happens? You do get a deal, what do you do? Yeah. And I think for many of our students that have never had the opportunity to even earn funds, money or income, it becomes a challenge when they do arrive at a Division I or college level and are now beginning to earn. So I think for us we're still trying to figure out what's really happening, but we have already began to launch initiatives within our office to support our high school athletes around just the knowledge and what happens in that landscape, but also just, again, using that opportunity to provide additional supports around financial literacy for high school athletes.
It doesn't have to be an either or, this good thing, bad thing. It's let's use the opportunity to help kids in whatever way we can. Yeah, I love it. I know that we are near the end of our time, and there may be a few questions out there. Does anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question? Yep. I don't know if you could maybe speak up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a process for outside rentals, organizations that go through the district. We use Facilitron as a platform. We have been internally speaking about how do we have a different rate for community-based organizations that also serve in other capacities within our district. That hasn't quite been rolled out yet, but our goal would be that there's, in a sense, organizations that already provide services in other areas. But going back to the after-school program, I mean, we utilize our after-school program and expanded learning as a department and as a whole to really also reach out to additional community sports organizations that provide clinics and things of that nature. And so there's a lot of times where those relationships are already kind of partnered in with the district. But to talk about direct cost, that would be something that would go through our facilities rental piece. No, and I think that's a legit question. I think just, the why of the cost, that's a conversation for our facilities. I don't have really knowledge of it, but I know there's custodial requirements based on the union contracts that I have in place. But that's definitely a conversation that I will uplift for sure. But
Thank you for your question, and I think the tension of facility availability cost is real, and it's important, and needs to be certainly probably not unique to Oakland with respect to that. Ron, hey, yeah. Any other questions out there? Yep, here. So it's a question about the value of mental health training, particularly given your background in psychology.
Yeah, I think it's important. I know that there are certain courses and stuff that I had to take, and I thought it was very valuable, that's because I was eager to learn. I knew I wanted to explore the coaching space, and I knew that these were tools that were provided to me that were helpful. And I can go back to some of the courses that I took and be like, this was a valuable moment, and I used it in real time in practice. But in that same vein, it's also click, 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 click. I'm on it for 2 hours. I get my certification. So I think that, yes, while the courses are in place and that they are good and they can continue to evolve and grow as new information is processed, it's also on the coaches and it's on the person who's taking the course and the person who's going to be in front of young people to care. And I was lucky enough to have my psych background to kind of help and use what I learned in courses and what I use in classes and see it in real time. But you don't have to have that type of background to care about an individual in front of you or to care about young people. So it's more so of employing people that want to do the work, want to maybe admit when they're wrong, want to learn and grow when new things come out and continue to adapt and be dynamic with, growing young people as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point about the relationship of your personal background and your readiness. I think this is, to be perfectly honest with you, also a conversation about teachers as coaches. If we think about the professional background of teachers and why they've historically been such a great population to coach, and that's a number that I'm frankly very concerned about and would love to see come back, more teachers coaching. But we know that's a complex issue. Yeah. Question.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that really helped us is looking at the impact on student achievement, student enrollment, attendance, and just what are the impacts of doing, of really investing in sports. And so we really initially started with just a data drive where we start, and that has really helped in those conversations with our school district to be able to leverage additional resources and dollars. Put in perspective, in 2019, when I started commissioning, our budget for middle school was $47,000, which was only the sports of basketball, soccer, and whatever else we could fit in with that. This past year, our budget has now increased to $800,000. Wow. And that was strictly just from a consistent conversation about how this impacts student attendance and student enrollment, which obviously that's how our school district is funded and how we get more students to attend. And so, but those definitely, I extend myself out. Lamont is sitting right in front of her, be a good contact for sure. And then obviously also listening to the student and parent voice of what they want and really having that concrete information. So as you are going to district leadership about this is the voice of parents of the sports that we want to offer. And initially it did take us having partnerships with local leagues to kind of figure out how we start the competition level as well. But yeah, more having to be a resource for you as well in that space.
Do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is start collecting some data. We have it at the high school level and happy to share, but it has been done a while. The NFHS is replicating this, and they're doing what's called a case for school sports. And we are the biggest intervention program you're going to find in any school. And let's take it further, not just sports, but involved in something, arts, music, drama. Just be involved in something and show that when students are involved outside of the classroom and make that connection to their peers, to their coaches, to their moderators, their teachers, they feel like they belong, they come to school more often. They get better grades because if they don't, they can't play. There's less truism. There's all kinds of data out there. So I think you can search for that. If you need any help finding that, I'm happy to steer you in the right direction there.
I know we're just at time, unfortunately. Apologies. I would add Aspen Institute data is obviously a lot of folks use our data for this specific purpose. I think that just generally we need to continue to be better at making the case for sport. Certainly in schools for folks who didn't grow up in it, weren't raised in it, don't have a direct connection to it. I think the case for sport needs to be articulated well using clear data. But it also has to be sort of couched in the when done well, because it doesn't inherently always do it. It has to be, it will do it if we do it well. And we need to have these conditions in order to do it well, and that requires a certain kind of support and resourcing and funding. So thank you to our amazing panel. Round of applause. I just want to close with two asks, or reminders. One is to let you know that if you're interested in the athletic trainer California legislative question, there's going to be a lunch tomorrow at kind of 12:50, 1 o'clock in Poly West, where Cindy's going to be meeting with the group to talk about legislative options in California around athletic training. 12:45. It's going to be immediately after the panel. Thanks, Cindy. And the other thing is, if you could, in your app, I don't know if you added this session to your app, but there's a survey that you can complete. We would love your feedback on the session. So you have to add this session to your calendar. And if you go into this session and it's in your calendar, there's a survey at the bottom. We'd love your feedback. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate it.